Today on Notsam Wrestling, now that UFC has run the Sphere, will WWE follow? Roman Reigns is back. Gunther's favorite wrestler is Goldberg. Ricky makes his first appearance in the WWE. That and so much more. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling, and what a week it has been. I will tell you this. On Saturday night, I was watching UFC, 306, I believe. From Las Vegas, from the Sphere, or I don't know if it's just Sphere. I said the Sphere. There were people on Twitter saying, don't let anybody hear you say that. It's just Sphere. Take off the. It's cleaner. I said, I don't know. I don't know anything about this thing. I just know that it's a three-dimensional circle, and that's what makes it a sphere. This is, of course, the multimedia wonder of the world that is located in Las Vegas. This arena... But that's for lack of a better term. There is no venue like this anywhere. And every time you see anything emanating from this place, you can't help but gaze in wonderment. Now, the Sphere, for those that don't know, is this spherical arena in Las Vegas. It's made up, the outside is entirely made up of like these LEDs that allow it to have these hyper-realistic videos playing on the outside of this arena. So you're driving by and you can make it look like a globe. You can make it look like an eyeball. You can make it look like, you know, your logo of whatever's coming, and it moves, and it's an amazing thing to see. I would recommend looking it up. On the inside, the way this arena is situated, up until this weekend, it had really only been used for big concerts, and generally speaking, like concerts where the bands would stay for a while, residencies, you know? Like I think September through December, for instance, the Eagles are going to be at the Sphere, and they're doing like 16 shows. U2 did it. Fish did it. The Dead did it. But the reason it has to be this residency is because the arena is styled in such a way where it seats like whatever it does, 15,000, something like that, 20,000, 15,000, I think. But it's like theater style seating. It's not in the round like most arenas are, because the entire back wall is the same shape as the building, which is this sphere. So the whole thing, and I mean, it's half the thing. It's the size of the seats. It's the same length. Is all amazing, you know, super 8K, 2000K video screens that extend all the way up to the ceiling past where the seats are. So it becomes this incredibly immersive experience. And then the stage is located right there on the floor as this video is behind them that is just stories and stories and stories tall. So the UFC ran it on Saturday for their 306 pay-per-view. And it was the first time like a sporting event had run there. And I was watching it, number one, because I like watching UFC, and I'm always fascinated by what they're doing, as well as, you know, how these fights just keep getting better and better and better as athletes. Just to watch this sport evolve in real time is a remarkable thing. But beyond that, for the purpose of this show, I'm watching to say, hey, if you can do a UFC pay-per-view from this building effectively, you can do a WWE show from this building, and I don't have to be the one to figure that out. TKO runs both the UFC and the WWE, so it can't be that far away. When it came to this, Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio were both in the audience for this show. But of course, they were on separate sides of the Sphere. Because if not, the fights wouldn't just be in the octagon. We'd see a father and son duking it out in the stands. There was, I think, photos that were online of Nick Khan may or may not have been there, which is, again, not a surprise because he wants to see what this place looks like. Now, it is more expensive to run the Sphere than it would be to run a traditional building, but because it's such a spectacle, you can charge more for tickets. That's what the UFC did. And according to Dana White, it was like one of their highest gates ever, if not their highest gate. And I think they brought in like $23 million. I mean, look, a lot of that would have gone into cost, but if you're making $23 million on the gate plus pay-per-view, it's becoming a very profitable venture. I mean, this is the type of thing that people will fly in to go, no, I want to see that show because I want to see what this thing looks like in the Sphere. And when you look at it, I would recommend, if you didn't watch the pay-per-view, find videos online and see. It's so interesting to watch because the way they set it up is basically they put the octagon on the floor, obviously, and they had the theater-style arena seating on the one side of it, and then they put more seating on the floor. So it wasn't like raised, it wasn't arena style. It wasn't in the round so much, but it was floor seating all the way around the octagon. So when you just had shots of the octagon, you had seating. They put some bleachers on the floor on the other side of it. So it still had this aura of people around it. What you don't want is one side of the thing to have nobody there, and when you're shooting it, you just see there's no audience. So they figured out how to do that, but they also figured out how to utilize this technological wonder to their advantage. I mean, the opening video, the entrances that they had, and this is UFC. Entrances have never been like the production value. While it's good for UFC, it's not WWE. It's not this sort of over the top spectacle, or traditionally it hasn't been, but it really was when they were in the Sphere. When you watch these videos, it's almost difficult to, as a person, it's almost difficult to be watching it and really taking into account where everything is, just because the sizing of everything seems so unnatural, and the movement and where things are located. You can see how immersive it is, but it made for an amazing pay-per-view presentation, which was untested before the UFC walked in. So as I was looking at it, I couldn't help, as I was watching UFC 306, I couldn't help but think the Sphere is a spot that the WWE needs to run. The question is, what gets run in the Sphere? Now, some people, of course, were bringing up, and this was months ago, that this would be a good spot to do maybe SmackDown and Raw on WrestleMania weekend, right? WrestleMania week, do SmackDown and Raw there, since WrestleMania is going to be in Vegas. And it'd be awesome. But when I tell you this place is a spectacle, it is such a spectacle that it has its own identity. It becomes its own show. So for me, you have to run a show out of the Sphere that has an identity that lives within that venue. So it would have to be some kind of special. A premium live event? Absolutely. Could you run a SummerSlam out of there? Absolutely. Could you run a Bad Blood or any of these other premium live events out of there? Absolutely. But I couldn't help but think, as I was wondering, well, what is something that they really want to make feel special, or that they may really want to make feel special? And then I remembered, right? And people have been talking about this on the internet lately, that when the WWE signed with USA to air SmackDown, which started on Friday, they also signed a deal where every year they would present 4 specials on NBC proper, so the network NBC, so Channel 4 here in New York on NBC, they would run shows. Now, way back in the day, NBC was the home of a show that became a WWE staple in the 1980s. And that show is Saturday night's Main Event. To me, if you want to concentrate on getting new eyeballs on this product, if you want to show the world how big WWE has become, I would love to see the WWE bring back Saturday night's Main Event. Treat it as a huge show. Bring Jesse Ventura in to maybe host the thing or do something on it. Present it live on NBC from the Sphere in Las Vegas. Saturday night's Main Event. I kind of feel like it's built for it. I mean, imagine the people that haven't been watching WWE in a good amount of time going like, I keep hearing about it. I heard about when The Rock was back. I keep hearing about this Roman Reigns, this Cody Rhodes. What's going on? And then they turn on NBC for Saturday night's Main Event. And we're in the Sphere? It doesn't get any better than that. That's what I'd like to see run out of the Sphere. But we can't just do Sphere talk all day, Because right now, I'm seriously considering making Notsam Wrestling a podcast where we really focus on the hottest name in professional wrestling right now, and that's Ricky. Ricky, let's give it up to Ricky. Ricky made his debut on SmackDown. There was a lot of speculation as to who would be Kevin Owens' mystery partner. A lot of people thought, well, Randy Orton would be the smart pick. Kevin Owens got to the ring. He said, my first choice isn't here, but I do have a second choice. And this gentleman came to the ring in bright pink and blue, had decided to skip the body wax for the last few weeks. And Kevin Owens announced, well, he asked him what his name was, and then announced him as Ricky. And we thought we were going to get Kevin Owens and Ricky versus A-Town Down Under until production person Bianca came in and said, your partner's here, your partner's here. And out comes Randy Orton. Now, we're having a lot of fun with Ricky. But I've got to tell you, the Ricky segment was not just comic relief. As a matter of fact, the Ricky segment only added to what we've been saying about Kevin Owens on this podcast for the last several weeks. What did Kevin Owens do to Ricky immediately after finding out that Randy Orton was in the building? Immediately after finding out that there was a better option. What did Randy Orton do to Ricky? Instead of giving Ricky his big shot, Ricky eats a Kevin Owens stunner and then gets sent packing. And Kevin Owens apologized. I'm sorry, I got excited. I had to do what I had to do. Randy's here. And out comes Randy Orton. And of course, Kevin Owens and Randy Orton beat A-Town Down Under. But ultimately, I think because maybe we're laughing at Ricky a little bit, we're not considering the fact that Kevin Owens' pattern of turning on tag team partners has not diminished whatsoever, one iota at all. The old Kevin, meet the new Kevin Owens, same as the old Kevin Owens. The only way to guarantee that he'll stab you in the back is to show him your back. And he'll do it. He can't help himself. You team with that guy, he's going to turn on you. You declare that guy a friend, he's going to turn on you. We have to see it. We have to see the slow unraveling of this facade that Kevin Owens has built to make everybody believe that he's this lovable guy, when in fact he is still. He's not the live. He flips it upside down. He's the evil. That said, there is something endlessly lovable about Kevin Owens and Randy Orton as a tag team. And they're a low-key super team. People want to talk about super teams, especially with Cody and Roman. Kevin Owens and Randy Orton already are a super team. And the fact that Kevin Owens and Randy Orton were doing their thing, they split them up. And what happened when Kevin Owens and Randy Orton split up? Just for a couple of months, they both went for world titles. When Kevin Owens and Randy Orton are separated, they're going for singles world championships, not just singles titles, the top singles titles available. Randy went after the world heavyweight champion. Kevin Owens went after the WWE Undisputed Champion. So now that they're back together, I think it's only a matter of time before Kevin Owens and Randy Orton are going after the tag team championship. And under normal circumstances, you'd go, well, don't you think Kevin Owens and Randy Orton are a little too big to be competing for the tag team championship? Number one, I would say don't disrespect the tag team championship like that. But number two, I would ask you, who are the tag team champions? The Bloodline, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, the infamous Tonga Loa, and the right-hand man, Tama Tonga. We've now got a scenario where even though they're being used in somewhat of a human shield capacity, they're still reminding everybody who's not Cody Rhodes or Roman Reigns, don't think that you can mess with us too. What happened on NXT? The Street Profits were there having a great match with Fraxium. That's what they call him, right? Nathan Frazier and Fraxium. And the Bloodline came in and wreaked havoc. They just laid out the Street Profits to remind them, hey, this is our division. And just because Cody or Roman can get the better of us does not mean any of you tag teams should be getting the smart ideas. DIY, you need to sit down. Street Profits, you need to sit down. So who's gonna dethrone the Bloodline? Well, I would think Randy Orton and Kevin Owens. Unless they get screwed. And if they get screwed, then how will they get their revenge? Well, we're inching towards October, right? Getting close. Once we hit October, we're inching towards November. The advertisements have already started. Survivor Series, War Games. War Games returns for Survivor Series. We have an extremely powerful 4-person faction. If you're going to tell me that at Bad Blood, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns are facing Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu, and maybe not at Bad Blood, but sometime in the near future, Randy Orton and Kevin Owens are going to be going after Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. It sounds to me like you've got 4 super baby faces and a 4-person heel combo, the likes of which need to be stopped. You've also got a scenario where now 3 of Roman Reigns' great enemies have to decide whether or not they can trust Roman Reigns in a match to stop the bloodline. And you've also got Roman Reigns, who honestly doesn't want to team with his enemies, doesn't want to trust them, but realizes there's a whole family and there's just me. I think based on the pieces that we have in play right now, as much as everybody was thinking old bloodline versus new bloodline, I think what you're looking at for Survivor Series is Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton versus Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa. And then you go, well, what about all these rumors of another person, another Tongan being added to the new bloodline? And that's extremely possible, okay? Especially since War Games matches in the past have been 5-on-5. We can do 4-on-4. They've done plenty of 4. They've done 3-on-3-on-3. They've done 4-on-4. They've done 5-on-5. So, okay, you want to say, well, that's not 5-on-5. Okay. So if they add another member of Solo Sikoa's bloodline before Survivor Series, and they've got a lot of time to do it, so I wouldn't be shocked, especially if that new member comes in Bad Blood and interferes in the business of Jacob Fatu, Solo Sikoa, Roman Reigns, and Cody Rhodes. Well, now Solo's bloodline has 5 members. Okay. Once Solo's bloodline has 5 members, that's the return of Jimmy Uso. Now we don't have to go beyond brands. We don't have to mix things up. We don't have to rebuild an old bloodline. We've either got Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa versus Roman, Cody, Randy, and Kevin, or you want to add a 5th Tongan, you add Jimmy Uso. Roman, Jimmy, Randy, Kevin, Cody. I think that's what you're looking at for Survivor Series War Games. And part of the reason that I think that is because I feel that there just has to be a reason why, aside from the blood, like Cody Rhodes' title reign, the meat when it comes to his stories have been bloodline based still, even all these months after WrestleMania. He's had great matches. He had great matches with AJ. He had a great match with Logan Paul. He had a great match with Kevin Owens. But none of them have been super sort of meaty stories that we come onto shows like this and go, gee, I wonder what happens next, and last over the course of months and end up with superstars and characters that are changed from the beginning to the end. That's when you know a real story has been told. When the superstars at the beginning of the story, the characters at the beginning of the story, because this isn't just wrestling. Characters at the beginning of the story should be completely changed by the end of the story in some way, shape, or form. But it should not be the same character anymore because of the journey that character has been on, win or lose. I think we're starting to see that with Cody. I think we're starting to see Cody change a little bit. If for no other reason than the simple fact that he said no to Nick Aldis. So we've got Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu confirmed for Bad Blood. And the reason I say confirmed is because I saw a graphic. The graphic is out there. It's happening. We did an emergency instant reaction podcast right after Smackdown on Friday night to Roman's return. If you want to get all my immediate feelings about everything that was going on there, I recommend listening to or watching that podcast. But the key here is Solo Sikoa was the one that came up with the idea to do the tag match. This was not Roman and Cody coming together and going like, you know what, let's combine forces and beat the Bloodline. This was the Bloodline saying, hey, both of you, why don't you guys team up and face us? This was Solo's idea. And it wasn't just Roman that said, no. This is family business. I don't need anybody. It was Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes went to Nick Aldis before he even spoke to Roman Reigns. And he said, I have no desire to do this. I don't want anything to do with the Bloodline. This is Roman's problem, not mine. The answer is no. Then the end of the show comes. Roman also says he doesn't want to team with Cody Rhodes until the Bloodline attacks. Roman signs the contract, and Cody puts out his Roman Reigns hand and decides to sign the contract as well. There were some watching, and I saw this reaction. I saw it in the comments. Some people said, that they really preferred the version of Cody Rhodes that just said no, and almost wished that he hadn't signed the contract at all. That Cody had just been like, no, you're on your own. And I wouldn't mind, you talk about a journey, I wouldn't mind watching that journey, even if the eventuality, it's a part of me goes like, what if you had either found another partner for Roman or this had been a handicap match, right? Like, what if Cody refused to have anything to do with the Bloodline all the way up until Survivor Series? So instead of it being a 90-minute arc where Cody didn't want to do this but was pushed into it, Cody had to be pushed into it over the course of several weeks. And maybe Cody's trying to have these other matches, but that the Bloodline thing just won't go away. No matter how much he wants to be disassociated with this family, he cannot become disassociated with this family. I get the desire to see that. I also think there's a desire for Cody Rhodes to rebel a little bit. There have been a lot of instances of Cody Rhodes being a great guy and a great friend and doing right by people. I think people want to see, not a lot, but a little bit of selfishness out of the American Nightmare. And I think we'll get there eventually. I think one of the reasons we're not seeing that is because when we do, it's going to be a boom. It's going to be a shot. I think a lot of people are wondering, what makes this story interesting to me is that I don't know where it's going to go because there's so many different possibilities. There's a lot of ways it could go. Even just looking at the finish, right? There is a version of this where Cody gets pinned by Jacob because Jacob Fatu versus Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu versus Roman Reigns are two massive premium live event main events that are just waiting to happen within the next few months. There is a version of this where Jacob takes out Cody Rhodes and Solo gets the pin on Cody Rhodes. And if Cody Rhodes eats the pin, by the way, the same way that he did in the tag team match with Seth Rollins against The Rock and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, if Cody Rhodes takes the pin in this tag match, does Cody resent Roman for allowing it to happen? Does Roman resent Cody for getting pinned? Does this add friction from one or both of them? Is there a version of this? Some people were bringing up the Horsemen and Sting, where Sting was like, okay, the people that I thought I would be rivals with forever have brought me in somehow. Strange bedfellows, the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation. Let's team up. And then the Horsemen turn on him. Is there a world where Roman Reigns joins the current bloodline and they all attack Cody? Of course, there's a world where that happens. I don't think that that's very likely because I don't think that the WWE would sacrifice what they've got with Roman Reigns, which is finally this ultra babyface. I mean, superhero amongst superheroes, the likes of which we haven't seen in some time. I think, though, when you look at it, right, and the fact that Cody has hostility towards Roman. People talk about WrestleMania, and people say, I've said on this show for a long time, since basically last April, since April, that Rock versus Cody is still the match. Many others have said, no, it's Roman versus Rock. It's not Rock Cody, it's Rock Roman. Listen, dude. There is a world in which we realize that we get to April because there is something about that chemistry between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. When Roman Reigns goes, this is still my ring. You're my crowd. This is my WWE. And everybody's going nuts. But then when Cody comes out and goes, it was your WWE until WrestleMania. I mean, you could, ooh, how could you not love that line and that story? That ultimately Roman Reigns still is declaring himself the tribal chief. He's saying nothing has changed regardless of who is wearing the Ulafala. And while we're looking over here at the left hand and going, that's right, Roman, you can get that Ulafala back. And whether you have that Ulafala or not, you're still the man. You're still number one. Over here in the right hand is Cody Rhodes going, I don't care what necklace you're wearing. I took this title from you, and I did it with your own rules. I pinned you at WrestleMania. There's no, you were gone and I claimed it. There's no nothing. Like, you can fight over this necklace with Solo Sikoa all you want. Ultimately, I took the thing that means everything to you. I took the thing that defines you as the top guy. I'm the top guy. And there is a world where people actually want Roman to be that top guy so badly that that is the thing that pushes Cody Rhodes into this villainous territory. Or you just end up with Hogan and Warrior. And you've got two ultra baby faces, right? But I think, and it's early to say, but I think if you look at the chemistry that Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes have as they're in the ring together, and you realize, oh, these are the two top stars, because that's what people say. They go, oh, Roman took Cody's top spot. Cody's not the top guy anymore. And then you see them together, and you're like, there's nobody close to Cody and Roman. Cody and Roman are the guys. This is the WWE. Cody and Roman, as I said a few weeks ago, are Rock and Austin. And what did The Rock and Austin do? They had 3 WrestleMania matches. We may get to April and realize again, look, WWE can have all the plans in the world that they want. WWE can plan to do Rock versus Cody. WWE can plan to do Rock versus Roman. But ultimately, when you look at Cody and Roman and you see them in the ring together, you may come to the conclusion as we head towards April that there's only one duo in the history of WWE that has the ability to headline, to main event 3 consecutive WrestleManias. And just as we thought the biggest match WWE had to offer in April was Rock and Roman, and we realized it was Cody and Roman, we may get to April 2025 and realize once again the biggest match that the WWE has to offer is Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. It's a crazy thing to think about, but I think it is more than possible. Hey, sorry for the interruption, but football is back, which means winning season is back. MyBookie is here to make sure you're ready to cash in on the action. This season, they're pulling out all the stops with awesome promos like weekly risk-free boosts on Thursdays, where if your bet hits, you win big. If it doesn't, no problem. MyBookie will refund your wager. I've been having a great time this season, making money, well, on people like the Patriots, on the Giants, not so much, but it makes it better because MyBookie is also giving away hundreds of thousands in prizes with their Super Survivor and Squares contests. When you're ready to get started, use promo code NOTSAM to claim a boost that doubles your money on your very first deposit. You heard that right. Double your money with code NOTSAM before you even place a bet. Loyalty pays off. With MyBookie Plus, the more you play, the more you win. It's simple. Climb through tiers of the Loyalty Rewards program to unlock even more epic promotions, exclusive giveaways, and bigger rewards. MyBookie Plus is the lock of the century. Bet on anything, anytime, anywhere, and make your season a winning season. But we're full of huge matches right now. WWE is, I mean, it's busting at the seams with all the huge matches that they have to offer. It was made official that the third match in the war between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk will happen at Bad Blood, and as many predicted, will take place inside a Hell in a Cell. I have loved this story. I even love this part of the story, where if you really think about it, Drew McIntyre beat CM Punk at SummerSlam. Drew McIntyre comes up on Raw and goes, yeah, we're done. That battle, I'm ready to move on. I'm going to go and move on to the world champion. And CM Punk goes, no, we're not done. That was a special referee match. We're not done. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre go to Bash in Berlin. CM Punk wins one. He goes to Raw and he goes, all right, we're done. We're done with that Drew McIntyre. I'm going to look to the World Heavyweight Champion. And Drew McIntyre says, oh, we're not done. We're not done. That was a Four Corners match. We're not done. And now we get to the point where a Hell in a Cell match is advertised at Bad Blood. Bad Blood returning as a premium live event for the first time in however many years. The premium live event where the first ever Hell in a Cell match took place in 1997. That's crazy. The Hell in a Cell as a concept is 27 years old. I just did that math quick. It could be wrong, but I'm going to go with 27 years old. And it still has that same sort of aura about it. And I think it is extremely helpful that they eliminated Hell in a Cell as a pay-per-view. But Adam Pearce comes to the ring and he says, CM Punk's not done with you, McIntyre. And he'll be on Raw next week. He's not here this week. But because he's not done with you, I've decided to make the match. This is going to be it. I can't wait for it because it's going to be the last one. He says that this is the match that will determine who wins this rivalry. This is the match that afterwards you guys are done with each other because it's Hell in a Cell. The emphasis is being put on the fact that this will ensure that this CM Punk Drew McIntyre thing is over. And it's hard for me to believe that there will be a rematch after this. I think that we are finally going to move on to what's next for both of these. But can you imagine that? 10 and a half months ago, or at this point, 10 months ago. It'll be 10 and a half months, I think, by the time we get to Hell in a Cell, more or less. CM Punk returns to the WWE in a moment nobody thought would happen. 10 years in the making. The whole decade. Everybody was like, hey, but we'd given up on it. We thought maybe when he left AEW, we might see him. But still, that was a big maybe. When it finally happened, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Who would have thought 10 and a half months after CM Punk made his surprise appearance that he'd be in the Hell in a Cell? As a matter of fact, I think he even did an interview at the press conference. And he said, Hell in a Cell. I don't know if it was, I don't remember which press conference it was, but I remember somebody suggesting a Hell in a Cell match to him and him going, no, dude, I do not want to put my body through that. But I think this Hell in a Cell, I think CM Punk is slowly but surely silencing the haters. The first group of haters were the people that said CM Punk is not going to last long. We're 10 months in, and it doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. And also his reputation of being a guy who is extremely happy to be back in the WWE, a guy who is extremely professional, and a guy who is business, hasn't had even a blemish on it since he returned to the WWE. Number two, after he got injured at the Royal Rumble, number two was, is he going to be in working shape? People speculated as to whether or not CM Punk was even going to be able to get himself in shape. I feel like that speculation has been silenced after SummerSlam, and then especially he was in even better shape at Bash in Berlin. That's complete. I don't ever hear that conversation anymore. His cardio and just the way he looks physically, he looks fantastic, if I do say so myself. And then the last one is the injury thing. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? And of course, that the screams from the haters got loud after the Royal Rumble when he tore his tricep. But look, he's a 2 incredibly physical matches, and now he's going into Hell in a Cell. Once he's done with Hell in a Cell, that criticism, I feel like, gets thrown out the window. And now we're on this road. CM Punk is back, and the story that CM Punk is back is not even a story anymore. That's when it just gets taken for granted because he's back in the fold full time. So to me, I absolutely feel like CM Punk wins the Hell in a Cell match. I think that, and I think that he should, right? This is realistically his 4th match back on television, and one of them was a Royal Rumble. And as far as televised singles matches in the WWE in this decade, CM Punk is 1-1. And I don't think that you brought CM Punk back to the WWE to have a 50-50 average. I think it's time for CM Punk to get some dubs and to show people that, yeah, this is what I'm here to have, these big matches where I'm a threat because I'll probably win. And that's the way it should be. I think what's beautiful about the scenario that we're in, and what's extremely optimistic about the CM Punk part of this scenario, is there's not a lot of fear of what's next, right? Because a lot of times you go, well, we've been telling this Drew McIntyre story since January and arguably since November of last year. So once this story is over, where does that leave? Where does that leave us? Where does that leave Punk? Where does that leave any of this? And the fact is, we're fine. Because CM Punk has had one televised opponent the entire time he's been back. We still haven't seen what CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes looks like in this era. We haven't seen what CM Punk versus Kevin Owens looks like in this era. We haven't seen what CM Punk versus Roman Reigns looks like in this era. Can you imagine when we get to the CM Punk Roman Reigns match, what that's going to be? When we get to, there's so much history with CM Punk and Roman Reigns. Make him look strong. There's so much history with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. You go back to that last promo that Cody Rhodes cut in AEW. There's so much with Kevin Owens and CM Punk. Kevin Owens just did an interview last week where he said he and CM Punk were not friends. There's no reason for them to speak. Okay, there it is. Anybody that still doesn't like CM Punk, say it out loud and let's get a match going. Because all we got is super fights that feel real. That's all we got. And they're all going to be great. And by the way, there's one name that I didn't mention on this list that I didn't mention purposefully. Is Seth Rollins. The match that we know was supposed to happen at WrestleMania last year hasn't happened yet. We've still got CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. We still got CM Punk versus Gunther. And I would imagine CM Punk versus Gunther is the next spot that you're going to go to. The fact that Punk already called out Gunther, I would imagine Punk versus Gunther is the next spot that you're going to go to. What's Punk versus Braun Breaker going to look like? We could do Punk versus Sami Zayn. We could do Punk versus Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso. There's so much. Punk versus Jacob Fatu. But I would think, I'm going to stick with what I said last week as far as Punk goes. I would have at the next Premium Live event, which I think is a month after Bad Blood, I would go CM Punk versus maybe Dominic Mysterio, maybe whoever, just a heel, CM Punk versus him. Survivor Series is CM Punk versus Gunther. CM Punk loses. Seth Rollins returns to the WWE by coming out at the end of that match and letting Punk know it's on. And then we build the CM Punk versus Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. What's next for Drew McIntyre? How does Drew McIntyre get to a place where he feels like, okay, there's a new rivalry that is just as interesting as this old rivalry. This is a new side of Drew McIntyre that we've been seeing. This is a personal side of Drew McIntyre. How do we get back to that? We already started, bro. Drew McIntyre going after Wade Barrett. And Wade Barrett's standing up. And let me tell you something. Wade Barrett is still an intimidating fella. Wade Barrett comes across as the type of guy that's wearing a suit because he chooses to, not because he has to. And the idea that Drew McIntyre is going to drag Wade Barrett off of commentary, I think we can tell a hell of a story between Wade Barrett and Drew McIntyre that results in a match Afterwards, Wade Barrett goes back to commentary because I think Wade Barrett is pretty damn good on commentary. But, I mean, why not? Why not go further with this Drew McIntyre, Wade Barrett thing? I think we're in a real good space where we've got the culmination of this great rivalry that I think no question has to be rivalry of the year at the end of this year. And then we move forward with both guys, as I said earlier, being changed from where they started. Drew McIntyre and CM Punk are two different people from who they were in January. And those are the two people that are going to move forward and tell new stories from that new perspective. Speaking of Gunther, one thing I didn't know about the world heavyweight champion, and I never took him to be a Goldberg guy. I didn't know Gunther was a Goldberg guy, but apparently Gunther, big Bill Goldberg guy. It's just one of those moments where you feel like WWE's in touch. Bret Hart is on the show. Awesome to see Bret Hart back on Monday Night Raw. Gave me goosebumps. Love me some Bret Hart. I even love this version of Bret Hart that will tell you exactly what's on his mind, and a lot of times it'll be negative about whoever he's thinking about at that moment. And very often that person is Bill Goldberg. Of course, Bill Goldberg, the person who concussed Bret Hart accidentally in a match, ended Bret Hart's career. Also somebody that Bret Hart has decided to curse out every opportunity given. And this is the guy that Gunther decides to bring up. I don't think anybody saw it coming. You know, I think that maybe you bring up Montreal. There are many things you could bring up. But when Gunther came out and said, best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, I thought the direction he was going to go in was, you might be the best there was, but you're looking at the best there is. You know, something like that. But that's my simple wrestling brain talking. That's not me realizing, no, we're playing it at the next level. When Gunther goes, it's an honor to be here with you. You know, you're a close second for my favorite wrestler. My favorite wrestler of all time is actually Bill Goldberg. And you're like, oh my God. Absolute savagery on the part of Gunther. To be sitting there with a legend and go, you know who I really like? The guy who you publicly hate. Who you blame for terrible things happening in your life. I love that guy, Bill Goldberg. That's how, I mean, Gunther is a villain. There was a time when I said, Gunther's not going to be able to be a villain much longer because people like him too much. And Gunther said, hold my German beer. Because I'm going to make sure that people boo me. I'm going to shout out Bill Goldberg right to Bret Hart's face. Oh, how could you not boo? It was beautiful. Poetry, Shakespeare. Gunther can do it all. Gunther can tell these amazing stories inside the confines of the squared circle. I take people who never would have liked this style of wrestling on a ride that makes them go, wow, I think I've been exposed to something new because that performer made me believe. And then just when you think that's all he's got in his toolbox, he gives the big shout out to Bill Goldberg right in front of Bret Hart's face. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to see. And then Sami Zayn comes out. And, you know, I think Sami Zayn is the best superstar at making you believe. And sometimes the mission is to be the underdog. That's like, there's no way Sami Zayn can win, but Sami Zayn's going to make you believe that he can win. And other times I don't even know that I want to see Sami Zayn in this match. And he will tell you a story that gets you to the place where you want to see him in the match. He'll get you to WrestleMania when a lot of people are going, I want Gable. It should have been Gable. It should have been Gable. And he will make you believe. And you will have no choice but to go on that Sami Zayn story with him. And sometimes it's not even in promos. Sometimes it's in the match where all you started. The entrance is coming. And you go, I don't know. I don't think Sami Zayn should have this match. And somehow, 3/4 of the way through, you're going, get him, Sami! Get him, Sami! That is a power. That's a superpower in the world of professional wrestling. And Sami Zayn has it. The question is, when's this match going to happen? I mean, when you look at Bad Blood is already loaded. You've got Solo and Jacob versus Roman and Cody. Which, by the way, I think that match will main event it. So the Hell in a Cell Punk versus Drew, I don't think will be the main event. But you've got the tag match with Roman and Cody. You've got Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk in Hell in a Cell. You've got Finn Balor versus Damian Priest. You've got Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan. You've got Nia Jax defending the championship against either Naomi or Bayley, depending on what the outcome of that SmackDown tag match is, unless one of those two gets pinned and gets thrown off SmackDown, which I don't think will happen. But I feel more like Tiffy will do something that will screw it up for Nia, and we'll end up with maybe Bayley versus Nia again, or Naomi versus whatever it is. But yeah, so I think that I don't know that Bad Blood will have room. I mean, when we talk about the length, first of all, the announcement was made. If you look at the fine print, Bad Blood has a special start time, 6 p.m. Eastern. I don't think that that's going to mean the show's longer, because I think there's a UFC pay-per-view that same day. So I think the idea is let's get Bad Blood done before 10 so that at 10 p.m. UFC starts without the competition, which makes sense. It's the same company now. I love that Bad Blood is starting at 6 p.m. because that means my Instant Reaction podcast can start earlier, but maybe I'm being selfish. I love an early pay-per-view. I love an afternoon pay-per-view. I love a Saturday pay-per-view. But I think Bad Blood may not be the place for it. It could be, and I'd be happy if it was. But if it's going to be a Bad Blood, now you got 6 matches. We know the LA Knight versus Andrade United States Championship match is not going to be at Bad Blood. It's going to be at SmackDown next week. That's not to say LA Knight won't defend the title at Bad Blood, but I don't see it happening. These shows have been 5 matches. You could add Sammy versus Gunther, but then you've also got 4 Raw matches and 2 SmackDown matches, which feels a little unequal. 3, 2, whatever. One of the 2 shows is going to have more matches, and Raw's 3 hours until October. So yeah. It'll be interesting to see when it happens. It was interesting to see NXT this week too. NXT picking up big on its way to the CW. Julia making her big debut. Love that. I had some thoughts about AEW this week, Dynamite, because it felt like AEW, and again, there are similarities, I guess, in the storylines, because maybe I want to see Wade Barrett get pulled off commentary because of how great it's been seeing Nigel McGuinness get pulled off commentary and get back in the ring. But I felt like AEW did a lot of angles on Dynamite this week. It was just boom, 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 hit, 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 hit. And some of them I really liked, and some of them I was like, okay, we'll see where this goes, whatever. I think that the overall picture, though, is what struck me. Because for me, AEW has all these ingredients, and I think that they could be used better to tell the same stories. These are the matches that people want to see. But it's how we get there that makes it feel like they're not drawing in enough, like they're not getting the story across to enough outside eyeballs and sets of ears. Wrestling fans, hardcore wrestling fans are like, of course I want to see Bryan Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness. But people who started watching wrestling in the last 2 years, which is a lot of people, they don't understand why. I would say people who started watching wrestling in the last 2 years probably don't understand why Bryan Danielson is facing Nigel McGuinness instead of Darby. I don't really understand that either. But I think that the thing about Dynamite this week for me was it didn't feel like a show that had a beginning, middle, and end. There was no thread that lasted through the show. And I think that that's important. I think that you don't want to have a show, regardless of how great the first segment is and how great the last segment is, because the Tag Team Gauntlet match was awesome. But as I was watching the Tag Team Gauntlet match, I thought to myself, this could be the first segment of the show, and I would feel the exact same way. As I'm watching all these segments, I go, you could mix and match all these segments, and it wouldn't make any difference to the flow of the show. And I don't think that that's a great, maybe that's a conscious choice, because they want to present it differently than the way other TV shows are presented. And that's fine if that's the choice. I just don't think it's a very good choice. I don't think that you end up making your stories feel as big as they are when you do things that way. For instance, I love, I'm going to say, this new Jon Moxley thing. This idea that like he's kind of doing things his way now, and he won't listen to any rules, and if you're in his way, he's going to run you over. And he's kind of a prison bully. the way he talks to Darby, the way he talks to Jack Perry, the way he carries himself. He's kind of like the alpha dog in the prison yard. And I like that vibe, and I love it for Jon Moxley. He came to Dynamite looking for Darby Allin. We saw Darby Allin enter the building at the beginning of the show, so we already know Darby's there. We had three different appearances of Jon Moxley and his group within the first 45 minutes of the show. And then none in the second hour after the Darby Allin-Moxley confrontation. So, again, it's kind of like, oh, we're done with that then, I guess. I'm more going, we don't have to have Mox, hunt through the building if we already saw Darby is here. You could just schedule a segment, and you both are going to go to the ring because we know you're both here. I was more well, what if... And I guess you had to do the Darby thing earlier in the show so you could do the Nigel thing after the Darby thing. But why did you have to do them both in the same show? It kind of took some of the steam out of the Nigel announcement, which is this massive, massive announcement that's going to be this huge match. Instead of going hey, why don't we have the show start with Mox just the way he started it, because the promo was unbelievable. And then he can go to the ring at some point and Pac can do his promo, because Pac's promo was awesome. And the match interruption was awesome. It was all good. Don't get me wrong here. It was all good stuff. And then maybe do the tag team gauntlet. You have Mox kind of searching for Darby and wanting to talk to Darby throughout the entire show. And we haven't seen Darby. And then you do the tag gauntlet and have it end at 9:45 instead of ending at the end of the show. Have it be the main event, but have a segment after. The way you did last week, right? Remember, I think it was last week, when there was a match that was the main event, but then the contract signing between Swerve and Hangman, that was the last segment of the show. Tell Mox's story throughout the show, and then right before the last commercial break, right? Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay win the tag match. And then you flash to the back. And at 9:45 p.m., you see Darby skating into the building. You see the same shot of him on the loading dock, but you see it at 9:45 instead of 8:03. And they're Darby Allin is here. What's going to happen? We'll be right back. And now you're waiting through that last commercial break because you're oh, this thing I've been waiting for the last 2 hours is actually going to happen. And then you get Mox and Darby in the ring together, and they have a confrontation similar to what we saw on Dynamite, but now it's happening at 10 p.m. And instead of saying Bryan Danielson is injured and can't defend the title, because we know we are going to have him wrestle at the show, so that makes no sense, have Mox bully him. Have Mox push him to the point where he has to prove himself. Have Mox try to take his shot from him. Get him to the point where he's you know what? I don't need to face Bryan Danielson. Maybe even say, there's a pay-per-view coming up in my home state. I want to face Bryan Danielson there. So instead of facing Bryan Danielson at Grand Slam, I want to face you. And then Mox says, you put your title shot on the line. Yes, I will. So now the match is, well, I gave up my title shot at Grand Slam because I want to face Bryan Danielson at Wrestle Dream because that's my hometown. And Mox has pressured him to the point where, okay, but it's all or nothing here. Either you are going to get to have that shot, or you're going to lose the shot entirely to Jon Moxley. And that's how we end the show. And then next week, Nigel McGuinness goes to see Tony Khan. Nigel McGuinness cuts a promo where he actually explains the backstory of Bryan Danielson and himself. Because to people who didn't watch Ring of Honor 10 years ago, there isn't a ton of explanation as to why Nigel and Bryan Danielson don't get along, why Nigel is this vitriolic against Bryan Danielson. So now that we know that the Bryan Danielson match is off with Darby for legitimate reasons, now is when Nigel McGuinness comes in and goes, hey, his dance card's open. It doesn't even have to be a title match. Let me get my hands on him. That's when he shows up. What's Nigel McGuiness doing? He's not on commentary tonight. And he walks into Tony Khan's office. And you hear him scream. You hear whatever you hear. And then he comes out and he tells the story of him and Bryan Danielson. Kind of like the way MJF would cut promos, like explaining his motivation. And really explain the motivation. And give examples. And then cut a video package showcasing. You own all the Ring of Honor footage. Show us what this was all about. And then boom. That's when you make the announcement. And now you've gotten to the same place. But you've built these two stories up in a way where they seem even bigger than they were when you just announced them, and hardcore fans could appreciate it. Just a thought, as I was watching Dynamite this week, I do... Raw is, of course, as I mentioned, moving to 2 hours, which I think is going to be great, mainly because I host Raw Talk, so it'll start at 10 p.m. instead of 11 p.m., and it will be done. I won't have to go to sleep at 12:30 a.m. and then wake up for a radio show, so that'll be great. That'll be fantastic. Before we move to emails, a couple of stories I wanted to talk about. Logan Paul versus Kevin Nash. Did you hear about this? So Kevin Nash does a segment on his podcast. And he says, F you to Logan Paul. And he says, you know, you can't become one of the boys just by talking about it. This guy doesn't, he says he doesn't do the house shows, but it's like, Kev, like what house shows? I mean, I guess they still do some live events, but what do you mean house shows? What house shows? But he basically says that, you know, the way, and this all is spawned from the Hulk Hogan Impulsive podcast, where Hulk Hogan is talking about a shoot and a work, and Logan Paul says he doesn't know the difference. And so now it's like, well, you're not really one of the boys. You're not really one of us. You're making a lot of money. But now there's a couple of things here. Number one, as far as Kevin Nash goes, I don't believe that Kevin Nash begrudges Logan Paul for making money, because that was literally one of the most impactful things Kevin Nash did in his career, was getting wrestling. He's the one, him and Scott Hall were the ones who kind of initiated the trend of guaranteed contracts for the boys. And figuring out, I mean, it was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash together that said, you know, they say you can make friends or you can make money. I've made some friends. I guess I'd like to make some money. And that was the whole thing, you know? So this idea that, oh, you shouldn't be paid this much, because you should be paid as much as you can possibly convince somebody to pay you, and then provide value in return. And Logan Paul is providing as much value as he can. I do think that Logan Paul really talks about how good he is. And he is really good. But he's also the only person that gets to wrestle 3 times a year and gets to, like, have help with everything that he does, and gets to train for every specific spot of every specific match and all this stuff. Now, again, these are all excuses, because ultimately, are his performances better than a lot of other performances? Yes. So you can't, there's nothing really to complain about there. Logan Paul returns fire by telling Kevin Nash, he put a video out of himself on Twitter, F me, no, F you. You're one of these old guys who's mad because I'm doing your job better than you could. So if I'm not one of the boys, if I'm not really a wrestler, if I don't really deserve this money, why am I better than everybody? This is my moment to put my tinfoil hat on. I don't think, I think we're so far beyond the idea of criticizing part-timers. If in 2024, clearly the part-timer thing works. People get injured less. People's careers can last longer. People who are high box office draws can continue to be high box office draws for years and years and years. And that's not because we're giving them special treatment. That's because they're a box office draw. You can't just make anybody a part-timer and expect, oh, well, now everybody's going to pay a ton of money to see him. No, it's everybody's going to pay a ton of money to see this guy right now. Let's make it sporadic so they continue to pay a lot of money to see this guy or gal for years to come. And that has been proven to be an effective thing. You know, when Hulk Hogan went to WCW, he had a limited match schedule. It clearly makes sense. I don't for a second. Now, allow me to put my tinfoil hat on. I don't for a second believe that Logan Paul does not know what the words work and shoot mean. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think when Logan Paul said, I don't know what work and shoot mean, Hulkster, I think Logan Paul was working. I think when Logan Paul says, I don't know who Kevin Nash is, I think Logan Paul is working. I think that Logan Paul has figured out the wrestling game pretty well. And I think Logan Paul has figured out that he is a heel and has figured out why he is a heel. I think Logan Paul has realized it is good business to make wrestling fans believe that you don't deserve the spot that you're in. You don't appreciate this business the way they appreciate it, and you're not a real wrestling fan. Good business for Logan Paul. It will make more people boo him. And if more people boo him, they will pay to see him so that they can boo him in person. And if they pay to see him, it's good for his bottom line. I think what Logan Paul doesn't want is people seeing him perform at a high level and going, you know what? I actually like this Logan Paul. He's actually really good, and he's putting the work in. No. I think he wants people going, he doesn't even know what wrestling is. He doesn't know what a work and a shoot is. He's cursing out Kevin Nash. He's cursing out this guy. I firmly believe that Logan Paul wants wrestling fans to feel like he doesn't belong. And I think that as time goes on, you will see more and more examples of this. That's just me and my conspiracy theories, but that is, and by the way, I love it. I think that it is a genius play. I think it is the correct play. I think it is absolutely going to get people to boo him. I think it is going to make money. And I think the fact that Logan Paul has decided to take his heel wrestling character and put it into his real life tells you that Logan Paul gets the business. And ultimately is going to be a good thing for professional wrestling fans like you and I, because we're going to get some good stories out of it. And that's all we really want, right? Is some good stories. Speaking of good stories, there's a new segment that I'd like to debut. This is big. We're debuting a new segment on Notsam Wrestling. It's called Where in the World is John Bradshaw Layfield? JBL shows up everywhere. You have to watch every minute of professional wrestling that exists. Get all the apps. Get your TNA subscription. Get your Triller TV. Get your MLWs. You have to get everything because you never know where JBL is going to show up. We've been covering it here on the show. He first showed up in AAA alongside Nick Nemeth. And then a week later, continued that partnership with Nick Nemeth, I think it was a week or two, by showing up in TNA. After that, he showed up in GCW. People said, what? GCW? The Outlaw Mud Show? GCW? Yes, JBL showed up in GCW and helped Mance Warner retain the GCW Game Changer Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. And people said, what is JBL doing? What is JBL doing? He wasn't done yet. This weekend, on Friday, JBL shows up at TNA Victory Road, takes out the system, and helps Nick Nemeth win. 24 hours later, on Saturday, JBL shows up at Fightland, which is an MLW show, Major League Wrestling, and takes out Brock Anderson's opponent, the son of Arn Anderson, whispers something in Brock Anderson's ear, and leaves. And when I say take out on both shows, he busted out that clothesline from hell, which still looks like it's smarts. I mean, he is wailing that arm around. And at every show he's been to, whether it's been AAA, TNA, GCW, MLW, he doesn't touch a microphone, which is interesting because he's a real good promo. Doesn't touch a microphone, is wearing that black duster, and has proclaimed himself on Twitter as the guardian of professional wrestling. What is JBL doing? That's been the question. And I love that what I think is happening is somebody has smartened up JBL, or maybe JBL just made the observation himself to how wide the wrestling landscape has become, and that it is possible to do things like he's doing. I think, if I had to guess right now, today, and this could change, I think JBL is building a stable across multiple promotions globally. I think across AAA, TNA, GCW, MLW, anywhere he wants to go, and you never know where he's going to go. JBL is building the Guardians of Professional Wrestling. And he's going and he's picking people that he feels are the ones that should be continuing on this great tradition of professional wrestling, and making sure that those who shouldn't be carrying this on and that are bad for the future of the business are put in the ground. And I think the fact that he's doing this across multiple promotions is just, it's the sickest thing ever. I loved it. I think JBL is one of the really great heels of his era. And I think that his name is not brought up enough. I think he was a great heel. And keep in mind, I mean, he had to completely reinvent himself to go from APA Bradshaw, that everybody loved, just a beer-drinking good old boy, and then to realize that that has run its course and have to cut his hair, totally reinvent himself, become this Wall Street tycoon guy, and made it work so much that for the first time ever, he's the world champion in main eventing shows. He's working on a level that I don't think gets appreciated very often. And then he went on. I thought he was a very good color commentator, very good broadcaster. So like, I'm a big JBL guy. So the idea that I think in this run, he's going to do stuff that hasn't really been done before, building this faction across multiple promotions, centered around this idea of preserving pro wrestling the way he sees it, which is a heel thing to do, obviously. But in the long run is going to make him so appreciated by wrestling fans. I'm going to love to see JBL get that love that I think he deserves. I do. Speaking of that love, who do you want to give love to? Who do you want to give disdain to? Whatever you want to do, email it in. You can be a part of the show. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com is our email address. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com is the email address. If you want to email in, maybe we'll read your email on the air. Joe writes in, greetings, my OPTC, the original and only podcast tribal chief. With SmackDown moving to USA, it's no longer available next day to watch on Hulu unless you have the Plus Live tier. I think it's a terrible move by WWE. Wouldn't you say the opportunity to grab more outside viewers would be having SmackDown available the next day? Yeah, I don't know. I've read on the internet that that's temporary, though. That it's going to Peacock. I don't know for sure that that's true. I don't know. I mean, obviously it's good to have your shows available wherever you can get them available, but I don't think their Hulu audience was like, a difference maker per se. But I think if it does end up on Peacock, I think that that's probably a better thing. It'll put everything all in one spot. Carson writes in, listener since Mania 34 season. Ooh. When will Jey Uso win an individual title? Maybe Monday. He's got the match with Braun Breaker. If original Bloodline and new Bloodline face each other, who do you think would be the voice for the new Bloodline, like Paul Heyman to the OG Bloodline? What do you think about Armando Estrada, who's with Umaga? Well, Carson, it's not a bad thought. They said Armando Estrada recently signed a Legends deal, so he's back in the fold. I think the fact that he was with Umaga is a connection. But I also don't know that they need a Paul Heyman. I don't know that they need a wise man. I think that Solo has been the mouthpiece for that group since April. So the idea, like Armando spoke for Umaga because Umaga was just a beast who didn't speak. He just grunted. Solo speaks. So, I think that the thing about Paul Heyman is that his reputation is that of somebody who is a real power player and difference maker. Paul Heyman will give you the secrets, the advice, the this, the that. So I'm not saying I'd be against Armando Estrada, but it would be a different thing, and I don't know that you need to add that. I think you should only add if it really is a clear benefit, not just because, well, if they have one, we should have one. Yeah, I don't think you need it. Leah writes in, first off, I want to acknowledge my podcast tribal chief. I appreciate that. I'm fairly new to wrestling and have found myself becoming a bigger fan of Obafemi by day. Oh, he's the best. I love the character he's crafting, and he feels like he could easily become an unstoppable monster. However, he is still pretty inexperienced. What do you think he needs to gain or do before he could be considered for the main roster? Best wishes to you and your family, Leah. Well, I think he could be considered for the main roster right now. I think it's a matter of story. You know what I mean? I think that right now, are you going to have him come on and squash everybody? I think there's a lot of people. I don't know that now's the time. I think in the meantime, just get him in there with as many different types of wrestlers as humanly possible. I feel like every time he's in there with a different type of wrestler, I like him even more. Whether it's another big guy, whether it's a squash match, but even man, when he was having those matches with Dragon Lee and he was selling for Dragon Lee, but in a realistic way, I was like, this guy's great. His promos are great. When he does just regular interviews, he's likable. He's great. I think it's just a matter of getting the timing right. I don't think people should be called to the main roster. Well, he's ready. He should go to the main roster now. It's also, when is the main roster ready for you? Okay, let's plan on getting Oba up there at some point. Okay, let's start telling stories that will open a lane for him to go down. And I think that's an important thing, especially if you want to portray potential giant superstars in the best way. Avery writes in, hello to the only podcast tribal chief, and I acknowledge you. I appreciate that, Avery. My question is, do you think AEW should throw away some championships? As of right now, they have 13 titles, and WWE only has 8, even though they have 2 different rosters. What do you think? Well, I don't think they need to throw things away. I think that they should probably do a little bit of a better job drawing a harder line between AEW and Ring of Honor. So they're completely separate. And, other than that, do I think they need all the titles? No. But if they can come up, they put on long pay-per-views and all the matches are really good. If they can come up with stories for all the titles, have as many titles as you want. And they have a big roster. So, I think that maybe they should go back to kind of treating Collision and Dynamite differently. The tag teams maybe are on Dynamite, the trios are on Collision. We defend the International Championship mainly on Collision. We defend the Continental Championship mainly on Dynamite. That's one way to do it. If you've got 2 shows, it never feels like WWE to me has an overabundance of championships, because for the most part, other than the women's tag, they stick to their own shows. So I think that would probably make a big difference. They've got the TV time for it. Raj from Queens writes in, when do you think we will revisit Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes? Probably not till after Survivor Series. Kevin reiterated that he is a backstabber, but everyone he turned on deserved it except Kofi. I don't think Ricky deserved it. We all love Kofi. Cody is now teaming with Roman. How will Kevin feel? Probably not great. Wild speculation here, but Kevin will stun Cody eventually because he helped Roman, and Cody will deserve it. Fight Owens, fight. P.S. I hope Jimmy Uso comes back in the best shape of his life. Oh, yeah, I hope Jimmy Uso comes back with an extra 30 pounds of muscle on him, like AJ and Randy did. I hope Jimmy Uso just comes back just jacked. That'd be awesome. No, as I said, I think Kevin Owens will end up also teaming with Roman at Survivor Series. I think post-Survivor Series is where you may get the KO heel turn. Daniel writes in, hail to the only podcast tribal chief. Is CVV your right-hand man? CVV is the infamous CVV. I was really, and then Dave LaGreca can be my right-hand man. Those are my Tongans. LaGreca and CVV are my Tongans. I was really hoping the O and the OTC was going to be only, not just original. Wow, that was so much fun on SmackDown. By the way, some people thought it was going to be all our tribal chief, and I'm glad that it was not, because Roman Reigns is like, I'm not here for you. You're mine. I'm not yours. I like that. 3 questions for you to speculate wildly on. All right. Does this all but guarantee a Bloodline Civil War at Survivor Series? I've already answered that. Do we see Jimmy and or Paul Heyman at Bad Blood? No, I think after. I don't think at Bad Blood. I think they would use that to pop a rating. And 3, which matchup for Survivor Series do you like best? Roman J, Jimmy, Sammy versus current Bloodline. Roman J, Jimmy, Lance, Zilla versus current Bloodline and Hikuleo. I've already given you what I want. I'm not picking between those two. P.S. I got tickets to the Smackdown after Bad Blood a couple weeks ago. Can't wait to see that Fallout live. It's going to be great, dude. That's going to be a real good Smackdown. Especially because that's almost December. We're going to be deep on the road to Royal... Well, maybe not deep, but we're starting the road to Royal Rumble at that point. Although, is Royal Rumble later? Is Royal Rumble early February this year? Either way, strong Smackdown to be at. I don't see any reason to just add Samoans or Tongans for the sake of adding Samoans and Tongans, unless you've got a story with them. Although I would love to see Lance Anoa'i in the WWE. I'd love to see Zilla Fatu in the WWE. No, I see it as the super baby faces versus the Bloodline. I don't think they'll go. But who knows? Let's see. Avik writes in, what's the haps from London? I found it pretty cool a few weeks ago when you mentioned that you were in the UK from 1988 to 1992. That's true, I was. I was in the UK the exact same years prior to going to India for 12 years. So here's some fun things I'd like to know. First, Hasbro. Mine was Black Suit $1 Million Man. My first Hasbro was Jake the Snake Roberts. First Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, as it was Turtle Mania. Mine was Splinter. I want to say Leonardo. Might have been Donatello, though. I think I wanted Leonardo, and Donatello was the one I was stuck with. The lunchbox you had for school, mine was Transformers. I had a Hulk Hogan lunchbox. I'm a real one, dude. I'm not one of these fly-by-night wrestling fans. You can't find a period of... You could go back like I'm a presidential candidate and try to research my past. Find a time in my life I wasn't a wrestling fan. Find a person in my life that knew me that didn't know I was a wrestling fan. I dare anybody. If you somehow... I've come into contact with a lot of people in my life. If you come into contact with somebody who knew me when I was in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, K through 12, college, whatever. Was Sam a wrestling fan back then? Oh, yeah. It was weird. It was like to a weird level. Yeah, he was. Quincy writes in, what's the hap, Sam? I've enjoyed your podcast the last few years. Shout out to my brother for getting me on your YouTube channel. If Cody Roman versus Solo Fatu kicks off Bad Blood, could we expect either Orton or KO to attack both Rhodes and Reigns? No. 2, a podcast War Games match, fantasy booking. You, CVV, Dave LaGreca, Solomonster, and JD from New York. Wow. Versus Brian Zane, WrestleLamia, Good Mike's Work, Simon Miller, and Brian Alvarez. Oof. That would be a good one. Let's see. How strongly do I feel about my team? I mean, it's a strong, strong team. I would switch out. I'm not going to tell you which one. I would switch out at least one. Not going to tell you which one. Maybe 2. Nicole writes in, hello, my podcast tribal chief. I acknowledge you. I have feelings and would love your thoughts. I love wrestling magazines. Me too. Being from Australia in the late 2000s, yes. Australia's the best. Us fans would have to wait 3 months for the latest edition, and still, I would beg my parents to purchase it. You know I'm a wrestling magazine freak, or was as well. My gripe, the recent PWI 500 with no Roman Reigns included. The PWI 500, all due respect, is so outdated that it makes it so that you can't really... It's awesome that Cody is the guy, and if I was a wrestler, I would still want to be number 1 on the PWI 500 because it is that important of a list. But the idea that Roman Reigns didn't wrestle enough matches so he can't be considered for the PWI 500 is ridiculous. I wouldn't mind Cody Rhodes being number 1, but Roman Reigns not being top 2 in the PWI 500 for a year that existed from July of last year, the end of July last year to the beginning of August this year, makes no sense whatsoever. I know he only wrestled 5 times in the ranking period, but the match quality, major feuds, and his prominence should account for something. It should account for everything. He main evented WrestleMania twice this year. So did Cody. There's 2 people this year who main evented WrestleMania twice in 1 year. Roman and Cody. Even when not on TV, he still drives storylines and interest 1,000%. Look, I would not be so miffy about this, but when you rank Logan Paul at 37, who only had 8 singles matches in the same period, that's when I scratch my head. Yeah, that one makes no sense, and I think that they did that knowing that it made no sense, but it would get people talking. That's really what I think. But the idea that, like, Logan Paul being top 10 doesn't bother me. I'm sorry, Logan Paul, what number was he? Logan Paul being top 10 would probably bother me. Logan Paul at 37 is even low. Logan Paul being top 20 doesn't bother me at all. But the idea that Logan Paul top 20 and Roman Reigns not on the list, that makes no sense. Roman Reigns made a bigger impact this year than Logan Paul. And that's it's Roman Reigns. Tyler writes in, assuming Logan Paul returns for Crown Jewel and or Survivor Series, who are some opponents that you would like to see him face? Logan Paul versus Gunther would be a lot of fun. Logan Paul versus Gunther would be a riot. Kevin Owens versus Logan Paul. Although I guess we already saw that. Let's see. In the triple threat, right? I don't know, man. Logan Paul versus Gunther would be really good. Although it would kind of turn Gunther babyface, at least temporarily. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I could fantasy book Logan Paul, though, maybe in the coming weeks. Dan writes in, love the show. Great work as always with the emergency pod this weekend. One question I have for you though, because it's come up a couple of times now. You've mentioned that Roman and Cody are the biggest baby faces in the past 20 years. In saying that, do you think Daniel Bryan's peak a decade ago does not live up to that level? It was for too short a duration or just an oversight? Love to get your thoughts on the pod. All my best to you and the family, Dan. Yeah, I appreciate the question and your kind words for the family. It's not an oversight. I think that run from the Yes-O-Mania run is one of the greatest of all time. But yeah, it wasn't long enough. That's all. Daniel Bryan is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. But it's one thing to be the top babyface during WrestleMania season. It's another thing to be the top babyface for years. And Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes have both been massive stars and draws for like multiple years now. So it's just a different conversation. All right, last one. Oliver writes in, hello, podcast Tribal Chief. Hope all is well with you and the fam. Everything's great. I was hoping KO would turn on the USA debut. When he didn't, I was trying to think when and why he should turn. Then the end of SmackDown, Cody teaming with Roman. The fact that, look, I'm going to do another email because we kind of talked about that a lot. I'm going to do this one because I like the way you address me. But if I had to pick a time for Kevin Owens to turn, it would be the SmackDown after Survivor Series. It would be Roman Reigns, Jimmy Uso, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens on one War Games team. And then Kevin Owens turns on Cody Rhodes. The SmackDown after Survivor Series. Maybe because they lose. I don't know. Maybe Kevin Owens is the one that takes the pin. And then we go to maybe the main event of the Royal Rumble pay-per-view is Kevin Owens versus Cody with Kevin Owens as a bad guy. And then, yeah, maybe. Tanner writes in, greetings to the Lord of the Marks. Thank you for addressing me as such. As crowned on the Pat McAfee show, by the way. We talk about watching the product on Notsam Wrestling. Kevin Owens watches the product as much as us. He dipped out of the ring to run around and get back in the ring for the hot tag genius. Why won't that ball stooge Adam Pearce turn on Friday Night SmackDown to see how a true professional general manager does things like Nick Aldis? Ones to the sky from Tanner. It really is remarkable that if you watch the show, as far as general managers go, Nick Aldis has far better control of his program than does Adam Pearce. And they're both wonderful human beings. But as far as general managers go, Raw is absolute chaos every single week amongst all storylines. You got Bronson Reed squashing people through cars. You have Drew McIntyre and CM Punk doing God knows what. You have Gunther insulting legends to their faces. You have the Judgment Day wreaking absolute havoc. Liv and Dominic Mysterio using Monday Night Raw as their own personal Tinder. It's incredible the stuff that's happening on this show. Meanwhile, Nick Aldis and those smart plaid suits and that handsome British accent is walking around with the biggest shoulders I've ever seen and making sure that everybody, bloodline included, at least to an extent, falls in line. It's interesting to see the dichotomy. That's all I'm saying. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hope you guys enjoyed Notsam Wrestling. Don't forget to subscribe, listen on audio, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, SiriusXM app, whatever you want to do. Just subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review. You can watch the podcast every single week at youtube.com/Notsam Wrestling in its entirety. I would recommend listening and then watching, or watching and then listening. It's two different experiences, but on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit like, leave a comment. We'll see you very soon here on Notsam Wrestling.